Okay, greetings 3D printing class. This is our first video. We're just going to go over the basics of 3D printing. So when you open up Inventor, this is what it looks like. The main thing that we want to look at here is under the new box. We have 4 different types of files. We have a part file, assembly files, drawing files, and presentation files. For the most part, we're just going to be using part files and then maybe assembly files if you need them. The other 2 files we can use if you think it's necessary to present your project, but for right now we're just going to be using part files. Obviously under recent documents, anything that you've done recently will show up there, so you can pull it up without having to find it through a file system. You can also open up here. So if you click the open button, you can look for things that you've saved, and then new obviously will give you the same options as we have right here. So we're going to click on a part file. And this is our interface for making something. So there's a couple things I want to point out. On the left hand side we have our browser. The browser is kind of a quick way to find things as we build it in Inventor. So as we add features, it'll start to populate the browser, and if we need to change something, add something, delete something, we can find it here. Along the top we have different tabs. The 2 most important tabs are 3D model and sketch. 3D model has a lot of different buttons. We're mostly going to be using the start sketch and extrude, but depending on what you're making, you may use any of these other buttons as well. And there's a lot of different ways to make objects, so you might be able to make an object without having to use any of these buttons, but a lot of these make your life easier once you know how to use them. To make a sketch, this is another tab that we'll use a lot. To make something 3-dimensional, we usually start with something 2-dimensional and then, extrude it out. So we'll be using these 2 tabs. I'm going to click on Start Sketch, and I want to point out that this is our plane system. Anytime we make something, basically what we're going to do is make a sketch of a 2-dimensional object and then make it 3-dimensional. And our plane system helps us decide which plane to start our 2-dimensional sketch. We have the XZ plane, which is, if you think of looking at like a table, this would be the tabletop. The YZ and XY plane are 2 vertical planes. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. For 3D printing, if you imagine we're building up from our build plate, the XY plane, or the XZ plane is probably the best one, but it kind of depends on the object that you're making. The other thing I want to point out over here, this allows us to change our view. So once we start making a sketch and making a 3-dimensional object, we may want to look at it in a different way. So you can change your view by clicking on the box. If you get to a view that you don't like and you just want to go back to where you started, you could click home, and that will take you back to the beginning. You can, if you click shift and then your scroll button, you can slowly move it any way you'd like. And that is it for this one. So in our next video we'll go over some basic functions for making 3-dimensional objects.